Now, going on to the business blunder of the day, you have Ford to recall about 1.9 million Ford Explorer SUVs due to trim possibly falling off and maybe causing accidents. Not great. Now, this says Ford continues to have more recalls than I could possibly fathom. You could actually make a whole podcast around that one category. I'm not sure how interesting it would be, but there's a lot of content to work with, to say the least. Now, this comes to us thanks to CBS News, specifically Elizabeth Napoloni, and she noted that the recall will cover Explorers from 2011 to 2019 model years. Now, they note that the recall concerns an A-pillar retention clips that hold the trim that covers the vehicle's roof supports by the windshield. A-pillar trim retention clips may not be properly engaged, allowing the trim to detach, unquote. That's from a Ford Motors stated in a notification that is sent to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, acknowledging the recall. Flying parts could increase the risk of a crash, the agency said, both for the vehicle's driver and the others on the road. Looks like Ford recall comes after a year after the National Highway Traffic Association first announced its investigation into the sports utilities vehicles after receiving 164 complaints about trim pieces detaching on 2011 to 2019 Explorer SUVs. Now, the silver lining of the situation is, and of course, I always like to tell people, if you squint hard enough in life, you'll find a silver lining, or maybe a Cracker Jack prize, some might say. Nevertheless, the good news is that there are no reports of any crashes or injuries related to the loose parts at this time. So, not only good for litigation, lawsuits, and the shareholders, but also good morally. It always looks exponentially worse, terribly, and it is terribly, if there actually have been injuries or, heaven forbid, actual deaths from an actual recall. Now, this hasn't gotten to that point, and given the nature of the specific mechanical failure, I don't suspect would lead to any, but again, you want to get ahead of these situations and recall them before it could happen. Now, they noted that Ford encourages owners of the recall vehicles to contact dealers for an inspection where the parts will be available. Ford dealers will inspect and replace the A-pillar trim for free if needed, according to the recall. Now, they also know that car owners will receive a letter about the safety risk after March 13th, 2024, and a second letter will follow them when the remedy is available. Or you just tune in on this podcast instead of snail mail and relying on the U.S. Postal Service, heaven forbid. Now, they also noted that if you're specifically may be affected, you can call in, they'll run to their actual vehicle identification number or your VIN number. And unfortunately, if you are one of those folks, you can call this number. They note that Ford customer service is 1-866-436-7332, and Ford's model or Ford number for this recall is 24S02. So again, if you own one of those vehicles that may be affected, call 1-866-437-7332. And the recall number for this is 24S02. Or you can call the National Highway Traffic Association, which is 1-888-327-4236. Again, NHTSA is 1-888-327-4236. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, I'm not sure what. Again, this is one of those instances where a vehicle is the most complex, second most expensive thing most Americans will ever buy in their lifetime. I understand it's hard to do quality testing when there are so many components, and many of which you don't manufacture in-house. You work with a myriad of suppliers and sub-suppliers. It's a complex thing, don't get me wrong. I understand that. But there's so many recalls, I almost wonder, what is their durability test for these vehicles or these suppliers for the sub-components? I mean, this seems like either the clip was not spec'd properly, and again, if it's just off by a fraction of a millimeter, over time it could shake loose. I mean, again, there are a lot of variables. But again, I don't know if it's going to take, but whatever they're doing for quality assurance for these vehicles, just double the time or double the resources or double the wheel time, or AKA the amount of time a test driver is behind the wheel or an actual machinist touching the vehicle, so they can get to more of these failure points and fix them prior to. Because again, every time there's a recall, not only this is going to cost Ford money. Now, granted, it sounds like it's just a little clip, so fiscally speaking, it might not even be $5 per unit. Now, in aggregate, that adds up. And also, dealers don't necessarily like this, and it's not profitable for the dealers in most cases. They're just paid a minimum amount by Ford Motor Company. It's not good for the shareholders because it's not just the cost of the component, but also the cost to install it. Because again, the consumer does not have to pay for it. So the upside is if you're a consumer, this isn't going to hurt your pocketbook. The company is paying for this. But again, it hurts the brand reputation, and Ford is supposed to be, I don't know if it's not a coincidence, but they used to have the commercials called Ford Tough, and that used to be the whole shtick about the company. And you have all these recalls that just chisel away at the brand you're trying to build, and they stop making cars to try to focus more on SUVs and trucks because one, they're more profitable. Two, it's what they were selling most by number of units sold as well, and they're supposed to be more durable. And I would think if you have less vehicles you're selling and manufacturing, you're focusing on less product lines, you should be able to put more quality assurance into them. And again, the consumer perception is, well, this is, again, thankfully, it's not a mechanical failure, it's not an engine failure, it's not going to grenade the car, so to say, where a subcomponent of the engine breaks and causes the whole engine to catastrophically fail. Again, there's silver linings, but at the end of the day, having a recall that tarnishes your brand, it's a frustration thing for the consumers to have to go to the dealership and spend time and energy to do that. Gotta say, that is certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you everyone again for taking the time to tune in today. Again, we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of January, so click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, leaving a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or comment is a great way to give me some additional comments and additional feedback on how I can make the show better and better. Also, and lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.